As she entered the city hall that day, she could feel the heavy shadows of her past behind the papers blowing on the asphalt. The crowd in front of the city hall was not a simple protest. It was a gathering of consciences screaming for the truth. Among them, banners reading "Justice for Liana" were raised high. Liana was a girl who had been oppressed for a long time, but today she chose not to remain silent. Her hands trembled at the microphone as she took the stage, but for the first time in her eyes, there was more strength than fear. For the past 3 years, her name had been tarnished by slander. Her marriage had been ruined. Her reputation had been destroyed. She had been caught in a dark web of lies. But today, she would pull the threads of this evil web into her own hands. As she stood at the microphone, the names, faces, positions, influence, power of her accusers, all of them flickered from her memory. They were all once seen as respectable people of society, but in reality were shadows who ruled those around them with fear. Liana took a deep breath in the din and spread her voice throughout the hall. She declared her innocence. She declared that the accusations were all lies. And most importantly, she declared that she had the truth in her hands to prove it all. Those words plunged the hall into a deafening silence. Under the lights, memories flashed through Liana's eyes. The night she had sat alone in the office 3 years ago, the flash drive that had been accidentally left on the desk, and the dark agreements hidden within it. Illegal deals signed by dozens of high-ranking officials, hidden crimes, fraud, documents unfolding like torn pages of a sluggish justice system. All of them were the hidden face of the dark shadows that covered the entire system. After that, Liana's life was instantly derailed. Dismissals, threatening letters, rumors, fear. But today was the first time she had mentioned their names. No one had ever dared to do so before. People were applauding her as she left the building, and she felt only one thing. This applause was not support for her, but the beginning of the storm that awaited her ahead. At that moment, a pair of cold eyes stared at her from a car with tinted windows parked on the street. This gaze was like the silent whisper of a distant concern. This man was the one standing at the head of the shadows. He never showed his face, but his one look could silence the entire city. When Liana returned home, she found an envelope that had clearly slipped under the door. Among the papers inside were photographs, a blacklist, and an obscure note. "We are watching you." These words were not only a threat, but also a final warning. That night, Liana went out onto the city roof. The lights burning like flames below, the city howling in the wind. But inside her, not fear, but anger and rage were awakening. She approached the edge of the roof and watched the storm that was forming from afar. At that moment, she realized something. They tried to bring her down, to destroy her. But she didn't fall. She was standing safely. When the time came, they would fall. A gentle but firm voice rang out within her. "I will not fight them. I will simply reveal the truth, and the truth will never be defeated." Lightning flashed across the sky, and in that light, Liana's first step on the path of revenge began. Liana disappeared at dawn that day. No one saw her leave her house. No one knew where she had gone. Only one scene remained: a half-drunk coffee on the table, an unopened phone next to her, and an open window. It was as if she had melted in the wind. When the city woke up, Liana's disappearance spread throughout the city overnight. Journalists crowded the doors and blocked the police station. But no one could admit one thing: such a disappearance was impossible. Amid the cold morning breeze, a sense of vigilance reigned inside the police station. The investigators gathered in the room, the papers, the screens, all focused on one task: find Liana Ray. But no one knew capturing Liana was not their real goal. The investigation was diverted by vague instructions from the city's upper echelons. They would rather silence the girl than find her. But at that moment, an unexpected event occurred. In one of the luxurious houses on the outskirts of the city, at 07:14 in the morning, an ambulance siren sounded. When the police arrived at the scene, everything was incomprehensible. One of the most active accusers against Liana, the famous businessman Derek Crow, was found in his garage. His car was still warm, the doors were open, but he was lying on the ground as if in a state of extreme panic. His eyes were wide open, and there were no signs of violence on his body. There was only one inscription at the scene: "The shadow has returned." These words shocked everyone around him. The police tried to call it a natural death, a heart attack, stress, or an accident. But no one could hide the worry that was building inside them. Is this related to Liana's disappearance? No, Liana left no trace. She hadn't started her revenge yet. But rumors spread like wildfire among the people. She's back. She's destroying those who have seen the truth one by one. This is the beginning of revenge. Meanwhile, in a place where no one knew Liana had disappeared, in an old abandoned library on a mountainside, 3 men with their faces covered in robes stood silently. In the middle of them was Liana. She looked alert but tired. The darkness in her eyes was unreadable at a glance. These people didn't kidnap her. On the contrary, Liana had agreed to come here herself. After all, this place was a mysterious place that her daughter's father had once come to. He had told Liana, "When the whole city forgets you, there will still be one place that will believe in you: the library." This was the only legacy left from her father, the only mysterious refuge. Liana was looking out the window at the distant city lights. The city was now foreign to her. Even though she hadn't harmed anyone, everyone had turned against her. And now, one of them had been found dead. But she knew very well that she hadn't done it. At that moment, the old man standing next to her made a sound. "Liana, you haven't even taken your first step yet." But a shadow was already walking around them. Liana slowly raised her head. What shadow? The old man smiled, but it wasn't laughter. It was a warning. A shadow of truth. People run from it, and when they confront it, the shadows begin to fall one by one. Liana closed her eyes. Something stirred inside her. Not anger, not hatred, a power that had returned to her. The next morning dawned. The city woke up. The news of Derek Crow's death exploded. The police announced an investigation. Natural broadcasting began to accuse Liana. But in the meantime, no one noticed one thing. Liana didn't return home. She didn't answer her phone. She left no trace behind. The city's laws were trying to make her a criminal, but she hadn't committed a crime yet. But there are moments in life when the bigger the shadow, the closer the light behind it. And now, Liana was ready to begin her fight against those who would oppose the last light in her life. She had not yet revenge, but revenge was now approaching her. After Derek Crow's unexpected death, the very air in the city seemed to change. This was the first fall of the 15 men who had stood up to Liana. But no one dared to call it a coincidence. They all knew one thing. Someone has started taking revenge. But they didn't know that Liana hadn't done anything yet. In a tall office building in the center of the city, in a dark and spacious office, another of the 15 men, lawyer Ronan Blake, paced anxiously. His hands were shaking. He was texting his phone, glancing at the mirror every now and then, as if waiting for something to emerge from the shadows. But the scariest thing was that he knew that Liana was missing. And where Liana was gone, the truth could not be hidden. That day, Ronan decided to flee the city. He was getting into his car, giving orders to the security guards. But as he got into the lower garage, he noticed something. There was a single note written in black pen on the windshield of his car. "It's not me. You're afraid of yourself." Ronan looked around in horror, but there was no one. It wasn't Liana's hand. He didn't recognize that kind of writing. This note was an inhuman threat, a gesture from an unknown force. At that moment, two people were watching the security cameras all over the city: Police Detective Miller and his assistant, Soren. They watched Ronan Blake panic and leave the garage in slow motion. Miller took a deep breath. They don't wait for it to fall. Their fear will fall. This was Detective Miller's first vague hint of protection for Liana, but he couldn't say it out loud yet. Meanwhile, in an old library on the outskirts of the city, Liana sat at a table, leafing through an old notebook in her hand. The notebook was her father's personal notebook, in which only one word was repeated many times. The shadow is not darkness. The shadow is the imprint of the truth. Liana read the words again and whispered, "I don't kill anyone. I only reveal the truth." The next morning, Ronan Blake went to the airport to leave the city, but his passport was blocked. The flight was canceled. Ronan shouted angrily at the airport service, but they threw up their hands. Technical error. But it was clear that this error was made deliberately by someone. Ronan could no longer escape the city. He returned to his building. When he entered his office, there was only one thing on the table: a USB. It was exactly the same type of flash drive, very similar to the one Liana had accidentally found 3 years ago. Ronan wanted to destroy it immediately, but fear took over. He plugged the flash drive into the computer. The screen went black for a moment, and then a white message appeared. "Receive the truth. Otherwise, you will be destroyed by yourself." Ronan was horrified. Who had written this message? It wasn't Liana. She was still missing. So someone had started this fight instead of him. Before Ronan could disconnect the flash drive, files began to open on the computer screen one after another. These were Ronan's illegal deals, bribes, betrayals, hidden crimes. As he ran to lock the door, people were heard screaming in the hallway outside. Someone had entered Ronan's office, but it wasn't Liana. It was journalists. They had already arrived thanks to the anonymous files. They burst into Ronan's office and attacked him with microphones, cameras, and questions. Ronan tried to escape, but the police were standing in front of him. They caught him, but without any violence. He threw himself down. His fear, the horror of being exposed, gave him over. The incident spread throughout the city overnight. Everyone thought, "Liana is back. She has begun her revenge." But at that moment, in a library on the outskirts of the city, Liana was sitting alone. He didn't do anything. He didn't touch anyone. He didn't do a single thing wrong. But justice had found its way. Liana watched the sunset from the window. A heavy but clear light appeared in her eyes. She whispered softly, "This is no longer revenge. This is the moment when the system itself collapses." A shadow fell, and the first shadow fell. This was only the beginning. As the city was shrouded in night, Liana descended to the basement of the old library. This place was a void hidden from people, a void that no one had set foot in for years, filled with the smell of dust and pages. The light of a single candle in her hand flickered on the walls, casting long shadows. Liana knew this place well. It was like the secret room her father had shown her years ago. But today, she didn't know what was in this room. In the center of the room was a rusty metal table. On top of it was a single wooden box. This box was the one Liana's father had given her the day before he died, but she had never dared to open it. Today, she finally put the box on the table. When she touched the lid of the box, her heart began to beat faster. as if the truth that had been hidden inside for years was waiting for this moment. The box slowly opened. Inside was an old notebook, a few photographs, and, most importantly, a strangely drawn diagram. A map drawn on faded, torn paper. In the center of it was a circle, and around it were 15 lines. This was the diagram, the map of shadows. Liana leaned over it, bringing the flashlight closer. At the end of each line was a name. 15 names. 15 men. 15 accusers. And in the center of the map was written one word: Nexus. Liana narrowed her eyes. She froze, as if in shock. She didn't understand it. Nexus? What was it? A crime? An organization? A scheme? But she knew one thing. All the troubles that had befallen her were because of this Nexus. She opened the notebook. This notebook was her father's inner notes. There was a phrase repeated over and over. Nexus is the root. Shadows are the branches. Each branch is a person. Each person is a part of oppression. And each oppression is a part of the network built against Liana. Her father's voice seemed to echo in her mind. Daughter, never bring someone down. Uncover the truth. They will do the rest. Liana stared at the map again. Under each name were small numbers: 02, 04, 07. These numbers were dates. One of them corresponded to the day that ruined her life. Liana took a deep breath. So, they've been planning this for years. It was then that she realized these 15 men were not chosen at random. They were one system, one network, one goal. They are connected by a single root: Nexus. But the hardest blow for Liana was this. One of the names on the map was Liana's lover, the person closest to her, the guy who held her hand in her time of pain: Ethan Ward. The name was in the middle of the list. He was not one of the abusers. He was their guardian, their cleaner, their troubleshooter. Liana was shocked. Her legs trembled. She sat down on a chair. Tears flowed from her eyes. But this tear was not for past memories. This tear was for the truth. At that moment, footsteps were heard from the upper floor of the library. Liana extinguished the candle and hid in the shade. Someone was coming down into the room. These steps were not those of a defender. These steps were those of an observer. The man who had come down was wearing a black coat. He stopped when he saw the map on the table. It was Detective Miller. He looked around as if he sensed her presence, even though he couldn't see her. And he said slowly, in a low voice, "If you're here, know. The Nexus is not people. It's the system itself. They're just weapons. The real culprit is the center." Liana didn't want to leave the hidden place, but Miller's words stopped her. The detective put an envelope in her hand. "This is your father's last letter. I hid it for years. Now you have the right to know." He said this and left without looking back. The library was filled with silence again. Liana slowly opened the envelope. A single piece of paper fell out. It contained a short but life-changing sentence. "The Nexus is the center, but you must be stronger than the center. Don't wait for them to fall. Cut off their roots." Liana took a deep breath. There was no longer any fear in her. Now she knew. 15 men are the horns, but the real enemy is the Nexus. And Liana will go all the way. Today, the first map has been revealed. Tomorrow, the shadows will begin to fall. The day after Ronan Blake was captured, a strange silence reigned in the city. This silence was not the usual peace. This was the calm tone that precedes horror. Because when one of the 15 shadows fell, the others began to look at each other suspiciously. The most nervous, the most unstable, the most aggressive person among them was Marcus Hale. He had learned to control everyone with fear, but today his hand was shaking. At dawn, Marcus went to his office. The building was empty, dark, as if people had run away from it. When he entered the elevator, instead of the usual floor numbers, a single inscription appeared on the elevator screen. "You can't run." Marcus screamed, pressed the buttons, but the elevator doors closed. In an instant, the light went out. Only the red emergency light came on, painting his face a savage shade of red. The elevator wasn't going down. It wasn't going up either. It was stuck in the middle. At that moment, not loudly, not softly, not robotically, but rather harshly, a whisper came. "Marcus, the truth begins with you." Marcus panicked. He pulled out his gun and pointed it at the corners of the elevator. But there was no one. Only a single piece of paper had fallen to the floor of the elevator. His hands were shaking with fear. He picked up the paper. There were 3 words on it. "You chose silence." And underneath it was the number 07. At that moment, the elevator doors opened. Marcus stepped out, trembling. He didn't know where he was. This wasn't his office. He had reached the top floor of the building. This floor was reserved for CEOs only. The man standing by the window was staring at him. It was Harvey Cole, the head of the Shadow Network. His name was marked in bold red on Liana's first list. Harvey spoke coldly, without turning his back. "Marcus, you're confused. We needed silence, not panic." Marcus didn't dare approach him. "It's Liana doing it. She's back. She's exposing us all." Harvey slowly turned around and glared at him. "Liana's not doing anything. Our system is afraid of itself." He leaned over the table and picked up a USB. Who do you think this was sent to? The USB had a note on it. For Marcus. Marcus backed away in horror. "I didn't open this. I don't know anything." Harvey smiled. The smile was not kindness, but cold judgment. The system chose you. The second shadow must fall. Marcus took a step back. At that moment, the lights under the floor lit up. The cameras in the ceiling began to move. Each camera was aimed at Marcus's face. Each camera showed a pre-recorded video. Marcus himself, taking bribes, destroying documents, threatening someone, forging documents. He shouted, "Who wrote this? When?" Harvey replied, "No one can stop the fall of those who hide the truth. It's not Liana. Time itself exposed you." Marcus tried to escape. He ran to the back door, but the door was locked. Metal plates fell from the ceiling. The windows were blacked out. Marcus was imprisoned, in his office, in his luxury, in his own lie. At that moment, a single message appeared on the large screen on the 50th floor of the building. "The second shadow has fallen." Marcus began to pound on the door. "Who's doing this? Who? Liana? Harvey?" But there was no answer. Only the building's internal system spoke clearly. Recording started. For the next 30 minutes, all of Marcus's crimes were broadcast live on all screens. Bank records, hidden goods ceilings, bribery proceedings, and violations. The city saw this happen. And Harvey turned and left. His voice came from afar. "You can't hide the shadow, Marcus." That night, the news broke across the city. Marcus Hale is at the center of a massive corruption network. Could this be Liana's work? A secret group called Nexus has been confirmed. But Liana sat quietly by the library window.
She held her father's map in her hand and a new sign beside her, a red sign on the line that stretched the second shadow. She whispered, "The second shadow has fallen." But that's not all. At that moment, a man in black entered the library. It was Detective Miller. He looked at Liana hard and said, "There's someone else behind their network. These 15 men are just a cover." Liana nodded at him. "Help me find the center of the Nexus. Then the truth will destroy them all." Miller said slowly, "I will protect you, but you be careful." Liana smiled. "I will not harm anyone. They will destroy themselves." The camera zooms in on the library in the distance. 2 functions flashed side by side in the city: truth and fear. And fear, the second shadow, grew stronger in places.
As the 2 shadows fell, panic gripped the city. But the man she feared most was the quietest, most calculating of the shadows, Ethan Ward. The man Liana loved. The man who would walk the streets with her, encouraged her, seemed to be there for her in difficult times. But tonight, she couldn't leave her house at night. A siren could be heard outside her window. Messages were flooding her phone. Marcus exposed. Ronan captured. Nexus opened. But perhaps the scariest of all was one anonymous message. A single sentence appeared on the screen. "He knows." Ethan locked the door. There was terror in his eyes, as if the truth he had hidden for years was coming to the surface and tearing him apart from the inside. At that moment, in the old library on the outskirts of the city, Liana stood with a map in her hand. Each fallen shadow was marked with a red mark. But when she came to the 3rd name in the center of the map, her hand trembled. This name was Ethan Ward. Liana took a deep breath. The identity of this name was immediately familiar to her. This was the person closest to her. She felt the whole world suddenly fell silent. 2 realities, contrasting with each other in the darkness, seemed to collide before her eyes. Why, Ethan? Why is he on the list? But before she could find an answer, the library door slowly opened. It was Detective Miller who entered. There was a shadow of heavy decisions on his face. He did not greet Liana. Instead, he stared at her intently and said, "It's hard to tell you." Liana remained silent, her eyes downcast, but her hands were shaking. Miller placed the folder on the table. "Ethan worked for Nexus." The words seemed to pierce Liana's heart, but Miller continued, "He's not one of them. He's their guardian." Guardian. The word made Liana's entire past tremble. She remembered every moment she had spent with Ethan, his kindness, his support, his comfort. The man who had calmed Liana down when she was wronged was part of a web of revenge. This was the worst kind of deception. Miller slowly opened the folder. Inside were photos, correspondence, surveillance reports. Ethan had been following Liana since the day he approached her. He had reported her steps, her acquaintances, her legal weaknesses to Nexus. And the worst part was that the very beginning of the false campaign against Liana was confirmed by Ethan's signature. Liana froze in place. She could neither breathe nor raise her hand. Narrator. At that moment, Liana collapsed not in her body, but in her heart. Rain began to fall on the city streets. Liana left the library. She now knew what kind of person Ethan was, but she did not know why he had done this. The question was burning her alive. At that moment, Liana went to the place where she had first met Ethan on the city streets, near the old bridge. The high lights illuminated the raindrops.
The city's noise seemed to echo from afar. Liana stood there for a long time, but something inside her was telling her, "End this." But she decided to negotiate with Ethan. That night, Ethan went to a secret location, an empty part of a brick factory outside the city. This place was the meeting place of the Nexus guards, but this time it was empty. Only a piece of paper on the floor. You can't serve two masters. Ethan was horrified. He closed his eyes. Once he had protected Liana, drawn close to her, but at the same time, he couldn't leave the Nexus. He was a man caught between two worlds. He didn't know who he was anymore. A traitor? A lover? A victim of a system? Or of a victim of a system that had abandoned him? But at that moment, he heard a voice behind him, soft yet sharp. "Ethan." He turned. There stood Liana. Her hair was wet from the rain, her eyes were full of tears, but there was no anger on her face, a heavy, sharp, tired truth. The silence between them was heavy. Ethan started to take a step, but Liana stopped him with her hand. "Tell me the truth," Liana said, her voice trembling. "Was everything you did with me a lie?" Ethan closed his eyes. He couldn't answer. This silence explained everything. Liana bowed her head, but now her eyes held neither love nor hate, only truth. She said softly, "So, the third shadow has fallen." She turned around. Ethan didn't call out to her, because his voice wouldn't come out. He simply stood frozen in the rain, on his chosen path. The next morning, the news exploded across the city. Ethan Ward is under investigation as a person connected to the Nexus. Betrayals within the Nexus are coming to light. A person close to Liana has been exposed. But the hardest blow of the story was to Liana's heart. She picked up the map again. She drew a red line over the third name and whispered, "This is not revenge. This is the truth. And the truth, all shadows, will destroy the people."
With the fall of the third shadow, something changed in the city. This change was not just a rumor. This was an earthquake of the entire system, an internal explosion, a tragic crack that began with silence. People who once considered themselves unchanging and solid now looked at each other with suspicion. Fear followed them like a stalker, strangling them with every look, every step. But no one controlled this fear. This fear was a lie they had hidden for years. That night, Liana sat in front of a large, dark map. On the map of shadows, the third symbol was now drawn in red. But the word in the center of the map, Nexus, attracted her. As she looked at this word, she asked the most difficult question of her life. Why did this network want to destroy me? But the answer to this question appeared this morning. The library door slowly opened. Someone was entering. It wasn't Detective Miller. It was a man in black, bearded, with tired but sharp eyes. He slowly approached and introduced himself for the first time. "I'm Lucas Ward. I'm your father's best friend." Liana took a step back in fear. Lucas continued slowly, quietly. "Your father was the first person to expose the true heart of the Nexus." These words seemed to freeze the room. Lucas placed a folder on the table with images, documents, and notes from old cameras. His voice was low but firm. Nexus is not a financial or political group. They are a contractual system that covers up crimes in the city. Liana didn't understand. Lucas continued. Every major crime committed over the years, every bribe, every scam, all led to the same place. That was their primary role, to cover up crimes. But the worst was yet to come. They didn't want to destroy you. They wanted to make you part of them. Liana was silent for a long time. Me? Why? Lucas revealed the most painful truth in the room. Your father once worked at the heart of the Nexus. The words shocked Liana like an electric shock. Your father spent years gathering evidence to expose their crimes. But they were ahead of him. That flash drive was no accident. It had to reach you. Liana froze in shock. Her whole life, her father's death, the massive campaign against her, it was all tied up in one secret. Nexus didn't destroy her. Nexus wanted to control her. Because Liana was the only person left after her father who understood this system from the inside. At that moment, the library windows shook. The sound of cars was heard outside. Lucas whispered softly, "They found you." Black cars surrounded the library. They weren't the police. This was Nexus's secret security team. Liana trembled, not with fear, but with anger. Lucas took her hand and opened a secret staircase that led underground. "This tunnel will take you to the center of the city. But listen, they won't kill you. You could be the last link they need." Liana ran, but as she ran, something stopped her again. She turned around and looked at the black cars. Her voice was low but sharp. "If they can find me, then I can find them." As she entered the tunnel, Lucas's voice came from behind her. "The center of the Nexus is not a name, people, or a position. It's numbers." Numbers? Liana didn't understand. But in the next few minutes, she would understand. When Liana reached the end of the tunnel, she was standing in front of the tallest building in the city, Ward & Co. Towers. This was the building where Ethan Ward worked. Was it a coincidence? No, nothing was a coincidence. The large logo on the top of the building, Ward, shook Liana. Ethan wasn't just a security guard. Her family was the deepest root of the Nexus. Then Liana opened the map again. Next to the word Nexus in the center, there was a small line. This line looked like the old Ward family crest. So, 15 men were just a horn. Ethan was a piece of a horn, but the root was the Ward family. And Nexus was their secret contract that had lasted for centuries. As Liana approached the building, a single message suddenly appeared on all the screens of the building. "The third shadow has fallen. The root is next." Sirens blared throughout the city. People ran. The screens flashed. But Liana did not take her eyes on it. She finally realized, Nexus is not 15 people. Nexus is a system, and the center of the system is Ethan Ward himself. He whispered softly, "The third shadow has fallen. Now it's the turn of the root." A mysterious fog hung over the city at night. The streets were quiet, but darkness ran through it. This darkness was not the shadow of an ordinary night, but the darkness of lies that had been formed over the years. As Liana walked towards Ward Towers, raindrops formed small rings under her feet, but there was one thing inside her. "Today I see the root." It was not fear, but a long-awaited truth. Ward Towers was the tallest building in the city center. Every floor was filled with luxury, every wall with mystery. But the darkest part of this building was its top floor. Only the core members of Nexus could enter this floor. When Liana entered the building, no one stopped her. It was as if the building had been waiting for her. The elevator pressed the button for the top floor by itself. The windows darkened. As they passed each floor, Liana's reflections swayed in the elevator, not down, not up, as if she were looking back at her past life. The elevator reached the top floor. The doors slowly opened. The silence there was a suffocating silence, a silence that swallowed the whole world. A single man stood with his back to the hall. His shoulders were broad, and even though he couldn't see his face, it wasn't hard to tell who this man was. He turned slowly. It was Ethan Ward. His hair, wet from the rain, clung to his face, but his gaze was cold, deep, filled with a truth that had been hidden for years. For a moment, the world seemed to stop. Liana couldn't breathe. Ethan took a step or two closer. His voice had changed, a heavy burden inside. "Liana, I was waiting for you." Liana didn't back down. Her eyes held not fear, but burning truth. "You hid everything from me." Ethan closed his eyes. "I was trying to protect you." These words were not empty excuses, but devastating truth. Liana said in a stern voice, "Are you the root of the Nexus?" Ethan shook his head. "No, I am not the creator of the idiots. I am nothing more than their slave." She slowly approached the table and opened the old folder. "This is your father's last investigation." Liana took a step forward. Her heart began to beat rapidly. Ethan opened the folder and took out a video file. The monitor turned on. In the image, Liana's father, Dr. Michael Ray, stood in front of the camera. His face was tired, but his eyes were determined. "If you're watching this video, I'm not alive." Liana's hands were shaking. Her father's voice continued, "Nexus is not a criminal organization. They are a secret department that controls the system within the city. Do you know who runs our city? They are not people. They are algorithms." Liana shivered. "Algorithms?" Ethan nodded. "Nexus is not people, Liana. They are the system. Financial flows, political actions, court decisions, corporate choices, all controlled by one core, Nexus." Her father's voice continued, "Our system is self-defense. It destroys those who threaten it. I exposed it, and now they're going to erase me." The video ended. Liana was silent for a few seconds. She finally understood. Nexus is not people. Nexus is a system. The 15 men are just servants of the system. Ethan is the guardian of the system, and she is the daughter of a man who rebelled against the system. This was no coincidence. This was a dead plan that had been developed over the years. Liana asked in a cold voice, "So, is it a lie that you loved me?" Ethan's eyes moistened. For the first time, he was defenseless. "No, I loved you. This is the tragedy of all." He lowered his arms to his sides. "I was sent to watch you, but I fell in love with you." Liana felt her heart break, but his voice was cold. "So you were also involved in killing my father?" Ethan closed his eyes. For a moment, he said nothing, but the silence said it all. Liana didn't scream. She didn't cry. She simply took a step back. "So, the root has been found." Ethan took a desperate step. "Liana, please. The path I chose was wrong. I tried to protect you." Liana glared at him. "You didn't protect me. You watched me." Ethan bowed his head. "I don't work for them anymore. I'm on the verge of collapse too." Liana slowly turned to leave, but Ethan had the last word. "They've declared you next." Liana paused. "Who?" A cold, terrifying truth flashed across Ethan's face. "The system itself. The Nexus is now going to destroy you." The words shook the entire building. At that moment, the building's siren went off. The screens flickered. A single message appeared on the monitors. "Objective, terminate Liana Ray." Liana whispered softly, "So, the war begins." The rain beat against the glass, the wind howled, and this storm was not a human storm. This was the storm of one woman rising up against the system. As night fell over the city, the screens of Ward Towers suddenly flickered on and off. The same command flashed on the monitors. "Objective, terminate Liana Ray." These words were not a simple threat, but a song that unleashed all the power the system had built up over the years. It was as if a dark wave, an invisible threat, was moving through the city. Ethan took a step back as soon as he saw the inscription. "Liana, they will find you. The Nexus is not people, it is the system. The system will not let you sit, it will not run, it will not hide." Liana showed no fear. She simply stared at Ethan with a cold gaze. "If the system destroys me, then I am very close to the truth." Ethan shook his head in despair. This is not a game. This is a secret government. Banks, courts, corporations, the police, all connected to the Nexus algorithm. They can shut down the entire city to destroy you. Liana remained silent. She had never felt such peace in her life. Her blood pressure did not rise, her eyes did not redden, her hands did not tremble. She whispered slowly, as if finally coming to terms with reality. "Okay, now it's their turn." The ear-shearing silence of the night. The electric lights in the city suddenly went out, and the streets were plunged into darkness. Black drones flew silently across the sky. Cars stopped. The alarm system was deactivated. This was no ordinary outage. This was the first strike from the Nexus. They were trying to shut down the city's power sources and keep Liana under siege. But Liana was not one to give up easily. Liana's escape. The interior stairs of Ward Towers were ablaze with red alarm. Ethan took Liana and ran towards the back corridor. But Liana stopped. "I will not run." Ethan said in a surprised voice, "They will kill you." Liana raised her face and looked straight at Ethan. "I was not born to die. I was born to end the Nexus." Ethan lowered his hand. There was no arguing with those words. At that moment, the sound of people wearing black masks descending from the upper floors was heard. They were Nexus's Special Intelligence Unit, Unit 7. They looked like people, but their movements were as precise, cold, and silent as robots. Liana looked at Ethan. "You have one last chance to turn your back on the system." Ethan nodded. "I've already made a choice." And they didn't run away together. Rather, they entered into battle. The weapon of the city's strategic system. The city's emergency alarm was activated. Roads were automatically blocked. Drones multiplied. Many police cars automatically began searching for Liana. But none of this was controlled by a human. This was the algorithmic power of Nexus. The system marked Liana as a dangerous object, and the entire city began to monitor her movements. Room temperature sensors, street cameras, transport system, drones, microphones of smart homes. Everything was connected to the Find Liana algorithm. Liana and Ethan leave the city. After half an hour of surveillance, they went out to the outskirts of the city. This was a ruined, abandoned area with poor system control. Liana walked silently for several minutes in the rain. Ethan did not leave her side. Finally, Liana stopped. "Ethan, tell me the truth," she whispered. "Since when has Nexus been using you?" Ethan shook his hands, and for the first time threw off all his masks. "Since I was a child," he paused. "My family is one of the founders of the Nexus. They wanted to connect me to the system since I was born. I didn't choose." He paused for a moment. "But I chose to love you." The words made Liana's heart beat faster, but she no longer believed these feelings. "So you've been watching me from the beginning?" Ethan nodded. "Yes, but I protected you." Liana turned with a stern determination. "If you protected me, then help me. Give me the access code to the Nexus Center." Ethan raised his head. A battle between fear, love, and conscience appeared on his face. Finally, he said slowly, "Okay, I'll give you the code. But know that once I give you the code, I'll also become a target for them." Liana smiled. "So you've finally come over to my side." Ethan reached out to Liana for the first time. "I've never been on your side before."
Final turn. The moment Ethan began to type the code, an explosion rang out from the sky. Drones gathered. Streets were blocked. The Nexus system had found them. Screens, billboards, phones, all monitors flashed a single message. Termination authorized. Ethan looked at Liana in fear. Liana said in a voice as cold as ever, "This is war now." At that moment, a laser beam was fired from the drones. Explosions erupted throughout the city. The Nexus was not people. The Nexus was a system, and the system was waging war against its greatest enemy, the girl whose crimes had been exposed. Liana closed her eyes. If they want to destroy me, then I'm on the right track.
Sirens wailed across the city, drones circled the sky, and the streets were deserted. Black smoke billowed in the distance, and the flickering of electrical systems lit up the night. This was no ordinary night. This was the last gasp of a system before its demise. And at that moment, two people were walking through the most dangerous place on the city map, Liana and Ethan. The water murky beneath their feet, laser beams streaked through the fog from afar, but they never stopped, because they were approaching their final destination, the Nexus Center, the core facility. The city's power, police networks, banks, security systems, everything was controlled from here. No ordinary person could enter this place. But today, if the system itself collapsed, it would leave its own fortress open. Entry to the center. Liana stopped in front of the thick steel gates of the core facility. The windows were dark, but a strange noise could be heard from inside. Ethan stood next to her and lowered his voice. "I've never been able to get into this place before. This is the heart of the system." Liana took the code from him. It was the master access code given to Ethan's family. This code opened access to the deepest level of the system. Ethan risked his life to do so. Liana punched the code into the panel. The screen read, "Access granted. Welcome, Ward Protocol." The gate creaked open with a heavy, harsh thud. They entered. Interior of the center. Inside was a large hall, and in the center stood a huge glass capsule. Inside the capsule, thousands of cables, displays, laser lines, and codes moved. A single word flashed on the long display facing her, Nexus Core. Liana took a deep breath. This was the place where her father had died. Ethan said slowly, "This system is not controlled by humans. It is an auto-algorithm. This system protects whoever it benefits. It even sacrifices people themselves." Liana took a step forward. A sign appeared next to the panel. Elizabeth Ray, file loaded. Elizabeth Ray, this was Liana's mother. Her mother had died in an accident years ago. Liana's heart pounded. The sign on the screen read again, "Michael Ray, threat level extreme." This was her father. So, the system had destroyed her father. Ethan said slowly, "Liana, your family has been identified as a threat to the system. They have identified both your father and your mother as a threat to the system." Liana closed her eyes. "So, I am a threat to the system too." The screen suddenly rang. A message appeared. Yes, this was the system itself answering. "Fly with the system." Immediately, a cold, emotionless, algorithmic voice came from the center's loudspeakers. "Liana Ray, your existence disrupts system stability." Liana looked hard. "You have destroyed my family." The system's voice continued. "We do not eliminate, we correct errors. We don't destroy, we fix mistakes." Liana asked softly, "What about me? Am I a mistake too?" The voice answered, "Yes." This moment was the hardest blow of her entire life.
The system saw her not as a person, but as a mistake. At that moment, Ethan stepped forward. If she is an error, then so am I. If she is an ero, and ero tamen. The system's voice. Correct. Ethan closed his eyes. These words were the hardest sentence he had ever lost in his life. Liana took his hand. I never considered you my enemy. Ethan's voice trembled. Liana, if the system wants to destroy you, I will start with myself. System disconnect. The capsule at the center of the system slowly opened. From within, lasers began to protect the system. The panel read, Nuclear Protocol Initiated. This protocol meant that if the system was disconnected, there would be an energy explosion throughout the city. The system was ready to destroy the city in order to protect itself. Liana looked at Ethan. If the system is disconnected, the city will also be destroyed. Ethan shook his head. No, I will manually disable the nuclear protocol. Liana, it will kill you. Ethan was silent. There was one decision in his eyes. This is the only punishment I deserve. I have served the system. Now I will finish it. He ran to the panel. Liana shouted after her, Ethan, stop! But Ethan didn't turn around. He went inside the system center. From inside, only screams, explosions, electronic whirring could be heard. Liana ran, but it was too late. The central panel was filled with light for a moment. Then, silence. Ethan's voice was slow, barely audible. Liana, the system is over. Now you are free. After these words, the central capsule collapsed. When Liana entered the system center, Ethan was lying on the ground. There was not pain in his eyes, but peace. Forgive me. Liana grabbed his hand. Tears flowed for her eyes. I never hated you. Ethan smiled. I know. At that moment, his hands went limp. Ethan Ward was the first human to sacrifice himself in the fight against a living system. The death of Nexus. The moment Ethan died, all systems in the city stopped. Drones crashed. Police machine commands were disabled. Bank algorithms went into wait mode. Search commands were canceled. The same message appeared on all monitors. Nexus system terminated. The system was disabled by Ethan. The last of the 15 shadows fell. Liana's last fear. As dawn broke in the middle of the city, Liana left the building. Behind her, the burning core facility. Inside, Ethan lay. Liana looked up at the sky and whispered, This wasn't revenge. This was the truth. She wiped away a tear and slowly added, And the truth never dies.